we're going to take 12 weeks and do a step study. And so today we are going to introduce and talk about the experience, understanding, and knowledge of step one. Basically, the steps are the keys to unlock freedom, to enter into this idea of being the temple of God. Basically, the steps are a process of death of self and to really walk into freedom from what we're enslaved to. So step one reads on page 59 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. And then there's a dash, beautiful dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. So what are we talking about in step one? What are the things that we're powerless over? These are the keys. There's a powerlessness and an unmanageability, and it's about my life. And so there's an invitation there. There's a price to be paid. If you've been to anything like a movie or Blues Fest we have, there's a price to admission. So what am I admitting, and what's the price that it's going to cost? So basically, if I look at what I want to get away from, it's a relationship. So you might have a relationship with, it could be food, it could be pornography, it could be substance abuse, alcohol, crack cocaine, fentanyl, whatever it is. There's this relationship that I have that I'm powerless over, and the admission is to really enter into a new relationship. So I don't even need to know the cost of it. I just need to admit that I am powerless over this relationship that I have and that my life is unmanageable. So I want to really unpack what that means. And so this is the educational or knowledge side of things that need to move into an experience. And so I hope that's your case. I hope that you actually have an experience with step one. We read step one, and what I read was kind of an outline of it, but what the real step one is, and in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous we have 164 pages that have not changed, and I hope it will never change. And it's been orchestrated. I believe it's God breathed. It's almost the Bible for dummies by imperfect people. And basically it's a recipe of death of self, a recipe of entering into a new relationship. So the real step one reads, we learned that we had to fully concede to our inmost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we were like other people or presently may be had to be smashed. We alcoholic men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking, we know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. So here we have the beginning of the understanding of what it means to be alcoholic. What does it mean to be powerless? And what does step one really mean? Well, there's a few parts to it. So the powerless part, I believe, has two parts to it. So one of them is the conceding to my innermost being that I can't do something normally. I can't have I can't have a relationship with this substance in a healthy way. And the qualification of the powerlessness is found on page 44. And it says, if you honestly want to and you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And so this is a condition that grows over the course of time, just like any allergy. My wife is deathly allergic to peanuts, but in her teen years or in her young years, she used to eat peanut butter sandwiches. And then she had a reaction that was abnormal, and it caused a massive reaction. And today it's even worse. Sometimes the smell of peanuts could set her off. And so that's an abnormal reaction. So what are we talking about in substance abuse? And please use this framework for anything in your life. That could be nicotine, coffee, that could be certain relationships, that could be a way of living that does this thing, and this is what makes me powerless. So what happens when I put it in my body, when I put a substance of alcohol or drugs in my body, I have an abnormal reaction that produces a craving for more. And it causes me to have lack of control. It causes me to change my mind. It causes me to think that, I had two now, but maybe I really wanted four. So I'm just going to change my mind. And then I go back to the beer store, at 10 o'clock at night, or I order another pitcher, or I just keep changing my mind. That's one sign that I am actually powerless. I'm actually not choosing. It's choosing me. It's telling me what it needs to have happen. And so I'm having this reaction on the inside of me that is producing a craving for more. And so that could be your phone. That could be coffee for you. That could be food for you, pornography for you, something that's reacting on the inside of you that makes you more thirsty, that you just have a desire and a compulsion for more. So that is one side of the powerlessness to it. And so when I concede, I have to come into a position. Let's say you and me were running. I'm not a great runner, never have been, probably never will. But if we were running a race and it was like 10K and you're beating me at the beginning and I just lose sight of you, and I'm like, this is a race for like 5 grand. I'm going to lose no matter what. So I'm just going to concede, give you the 5 grand or whatever it is. I lost this. That's what conceding actually means. And so this powerlessness, this step takes, I believe, four characteristics. Number one is an honest assessment, but I need to know what I'm assessing. So what I'm talking about right now is this inability to control the substance. I need to accept my limitations. I need to be open to be able to change, because change is a mandatory part. If I'm going from one relationship to a new relationship, I have to accept and be open to change. And then number four is a willingness to go to any lengths to be rid of this relationship that I'm powerless over. And so you might have some experience to the extreme where I got to, where there was zero control. It owned me all the time, but it didn't start like that. You might be somebody that you believe that this is an unhealthy relationship. You want to investigate whether it's sugar, whether it's, dating, or like whatever it is, it's costing you more than you want it to. And it might own you a little bit. It's kind of like what happens in a disorder like epilepsy. You might not have seizures every day. It doesn't mean that you're controlling them when you don't. And so I'm familiar with it. This is within my family, and one of my sons has this disorder, and so he might have a seizure once a month or whatever it is. It doesn't mean that he's in control over it the other days. And so that's where we talk about this delusion that, well, 5 of the times that I drank or used or whatever the addiction is, 5 of those times I was in control over it. It didn't bother me. I stopped exactly when I didn't. But this one time, I just changed my mind. So this is where I have to actually be honest, accepting, openness, and willing to see that this relationship is actually worse than I think it is, because the whole point of the addiction is to cause delusions and justifications and explanations why I do it and why it's important and what is it actually beneficial to me about. Because if I have an allergy to peanuts, it has no benefit to me. Like, it might fill me up, but it's going to kill me at the same time. The second part of this is when I've stopped, I continue to think about it. I continue to, maybe it's not on the purposes of my mind, but there's an empty hole. And so let's say there's enough consequences to really want me to address this problem in my life. I can't stop when I start. It's costing me more than it's worth. It's causing me problems in my family, at work, that kind of thing. And I really want to address it. So I just put it away. And maybe you've done that 10 times over. You swear it off again and again and again, and it keeps coming up in your life. That is the mental part of it. And I believe that's, 80 part of that problem is the mental part of it. If you never go to it, if the mental never brings you to that substance or fill in the blank, then your body never reacts abnormally to it. So it's a bigger deal than most of us give credit for. So you look at this combination of this mental part and this physical part that happens on the inside that we can't get rid of. We have lots of experience of, well, I left my car keys at home. I didn't take a bank card. I put my credit card on ice. I put all these limitations, and for some odd reason, I can always crack that code and get back to it. So this is what's going on to make me powerless over, and use this framework for anything. What am I powerless over? And so is it having a physical abnormality? When I consume it, I get more thirsty. I have more of a desire. I have more of a compulsion to use it. And then when I want to stop using it, I have this mental part that brings me back to it. I wasn't even thinking about it. All of a sudden I'm doing it. I was 2 weeks out of it or 2 years out of it. And then all of a sudden I'm doing it again. How did that happen? What was the explanation? And if you wanted to be really honest, most of us, if we're honest, we don't know, because there's a mental part, a state of mind that happens. Typically for me, it was called suddenly. I wasn't even thinking about it. It was a happy day. It was a sad day. It was a blue day. It was a purple day. It was whatever day it was. And I had no thought of it. And then next thing you know, I'm on a 2 day bender, on a 3 day bender, whatever that looks like. So this is the inability to be able to control something. You have no power over it. The core of addiction, it owns you and you don't own it. And that is progressive. For many of us, it kind of starts like this. And then all of a sudden, as we get older, where I had a little bit of control, now I have zero. A couple Bible verses that I was reflecting on this morning. Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, has this prayer, and he says, Lord, I know the people's lives are not their own, for it is not for them to direct their steps. Discipline me, Lord, but only in due measure, not in your anger, or you will reduce me to nothing. And so this is the idea of a new relationship. The psalmist David, King David, he writes this about his body, like what's happening on the inside of me. He said, Lord, don't rebuke me in your anger or discipline me with your wrath. Your arrows have pierced me and your hands have come down on me. Because of your wrath, there is no health in my body. There's no soundness in my bones. Because of my sin, my guilt has overwhelmed me like a burden too heavy to bear. My wounds fester and are lonesome. Because of my sinful folly, I'm bowed down and brought very low. All day long, I go about mourning. My back is filled with searing pain. There's no health in my body. I am feeble and utterly crushed, in agony of heart. And so that's a good place to be if you recognize what's going on inside of you mentally and physically. When I found this out personally for me, it was a big relief, because I thought I had gone totally off the deep end and there was no coming back. But when I found out what was happening to me physically and mentally, I was actually relieved. The other thing is, Paul writes in Romans, he says, for I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is my sinful nature. For I have desired to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to, but the evil that I don't want to, this I keep on doing. Maybe Paul had a problem. Many of us can relate, and that's what I got to concede to, is that I'm powerless. And so when I look, I really have to know what the problem is, or I'm going to miss the solution. So this is something that if I've tried to battle it and I'm not successful, then I'm never going to regain power, and I need power from another source. So many of us, and this is the third part of the problem, many of us drank for a reason, or used for a reason, or got involved in relationships for, it gave us this, it filled a hole. It gave us a sense of ease and comfort, because if you're like me, you always had that inside of you. Maybe you were, I have a dog, and this is my best analogy. She's a little bit on the old side. She's a miniature pinscher, so she's runs the house basically. But she's getting old and she has a bad back, and she's got like arthritis. And so in the evening, she tries to get comfortable. So she comes and sits next to me. Then that doesn't work. So she goes over to another chair. Then she gets down. She gets a drink of water. Her little nails are clopping on the floor. and it's getting annoying. And then she sits down on the couch over here, and then she comes to the chair, and I'm watching TV. There's a chair under the TV, and then she goes around in circles, and you're like, just sit down, please. And then she sits down, she looks comfortable, and then she gets up. And then she comes over to, and she does this repetitively. And that's really how I felt inside. The big book describes it as irritable, restless, and discontented. And so that's the state I was. So alcohol never made my life unmanageable. The thing that I'm powerless over doesn't make my life unmanageable. It manages my life. And that's a big distinction. So basically what I'm looking for is a new manager to manage my spiritual condition, to manage this irritable, restless, and discontented spirit that I have. Basically a spirit that is disconnected from the love of God. I am an object of fear. I have the rebar of my life is fear. I'm being driven, and that's why I need this relief. That's why alcohol worked for me. That's why drugs worked for me. So that's what we're going to look at, is what does that actually look at? In step one, I'm powerless over these things that I'm consuming, over my body condition, over my mental condition, and it's all to fix my spiritual issue. We look at page 52, and it's a great read on the spiritual condition that maybe we can all relate to. We ask ourselves, um, were we having trouble with personal relationships? We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy and couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was this a basic solution to these bedevilments? More important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. So this is really what the problem is. It's manifested in our spirit. We try to solve that problem, to manage it through substances, and then we're left powerless. And you might have an experience of five years or 15 years. Some of us have full careers that we tried to manage this condition with substances. So how do I qualify somebody? How do you qualify yourself? Well, simply here's a qualification on page 58 of the big book, and put it in whatever context that you want, whatever you struggle with personally. Sorry, I don't have it right here. I lost my page. I really lost my page. Oh my goodness. I will find it. Okay, here we go. If, when honestly you want to, you cannot quit entirely, or if, when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. If that the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. So that's really what the price of admission is I need a spiritual experience. I have to concede to my innermost being that I am powerless over these substances. I'm powerless over this behavior. And if I could choose better, I would. That's the whole point of addiction, is to control you. So that's how I qualify somebody. I look at the spiritual problem right away, and our goal of the 12 steps is to actually experience a new relationship. So step one is basically this admission of going that I'm physically and mentally dependent on this, and I use this to fix this internal condition. So what did it look like for me? Well, in 2004, I was faced with the intensity of my addiction. I missed my son's birthday. I missed my wife's birthday in the same month. And I said to myself, I'm hurting these people that I love. It's better that I'm not here. I went on a quest not to wake up. I didn't want to hurt myself, but I did not want to wake up. I didn't know what the way out was. I was consumed with drugs and alcohol to a measure that was embarrassing for me to even be around anybody. And so I just said to myself in my despair that it's better that I'm not here, because I'm actually hurting people. So I went on a quest not to wake up. Again, I didn't want to hurt myself, but I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to wake up, and I kept waking up, and I kept waking up. And my experience happened. God came to me on a 5 day bender. I'm in my car. I'm waiting for the next thing to happen. I remember exactly where I am. I've been up for 5 days on a bender, and in my car, waiting for the next thing to do. I heard a voice in my head, and all of a sudden, I had this clarity, and it said, "As you were hurt, as you were abandoned as a kid, that's what you're doing to the ones you love." And I was faced with this immense realization that my biggest pain of being adopted when I was 2 years old, in my adult head, I was blessed. I was adopted into a beautiful family. But the reality was this hurt of abandonment, that I felt like I never fit in, that I never belonged, that I had to prove myself to the world around me. Addressing my spiritual wounding, my spiritual disconnect from God, and I'm trying to numb it with these substances. And it was really obvious to me that was my biggest hurt. And that's what I'm passing on to the people that I love. And then I was showing four pictures in a little vision. One was getting shot in a violent gunfight. Number two was in a jail cell for a long period of time, it felt like. And then another white padded room in a straitjacket. And I've been very familiar with all of those. A lot of violence in my background and in my criminal life. I've been in jail 4 times. And so I knew I've been at the Royal Ottawa a few times too as a patient, and I knew all of those very well. And then I was showing a static TV, like the hours of operation for the TV company was over, and it was just static. And I felt in that moment compelled to pick one. I knew the other three very well, and so that moment I picked that white picture, and I believe that was my first step experience. I conceded to my inmost being that the only way that I could live was either by death, insanity, or in a jail cell for the rest of my life if I kept going. So I conceded to the old way of living, and I committed to a new way of living. I didn't know what that was, but that's the picture that I chose. And I believe right there, I conceded to alcohol not being my manager. I conceded to wanting to a new way of living. And I actually conceded that alcohol was everything in my life. And I conceded that it needed to be out of my life. So really the price of admission in step one is basically God is everything or he's nothing. And so we get to go on this process. But to me, I didn't have the knowledge, I had the experience. And then my knowledge came of really what was happening. So again, to sum it up, I'm powerless over my physical being. When I consume, I can't stop. Number two is 80% of the problem, and that's the mental side of it. I'm consumed with thinking about it, but I don't even think I'm thinking about it. It just happens. So when I stop, when I start, I can't stop. And when I stop, I keep starting. And it's all because I have this internal condition. I'm irritable, restless, and discontented by nature. And these things are my manager, and I need a new manager, and that's what I'm conceding to.